Hey everybody, and welcome to your instructional video on thoracic spine cars, sometimes referred to as T-spine cars or controlled articular rotations. Now, a few things about cars in general. Number one, we never want to push into pain. So as we start moving today, if you experience discomfort, it doesn't mean don't move. It just means make your workspace or your movement pattern a little bit smaller. Two, we really want to try to isolate or disassociate the joint of interest. So in the case of today, I want to focus just on my thoracic spine and watch for other parts of the body getting involved, especially the pelvis today. Lastly, we want to remember to irradiate or create light tension across the body from head to toe as we perform our car's movement. Now, the spine is a pretty interesting set of joints in general, right? When I say rotate the spine, I get this a lot from clients, which is true. That is rotation of the entire spinal column in space. What it's not doing, however, is actually isolating individual vertebrae along the spine, and that's really what T-spine cars are all about. Now, the spine, unlike other joints, its primary movement is actually front to back, or flexion and extension, as opposed to rotation. So when you think about other joints, we'll just say the shoulder, for instance, rotation has to be trained first, as opposed to the spine, where flexion and extension are really what's needed in the beginning. Now, when we begin our car's movements, we're going to start with our arms across the chest. You can either gently press into the shoulders, you can bring it in closer to the neck, you can hug the torso, whatever works for you so that you feel comfortable. Our first movement is going to be spinal flexion. Now, if you have a little bit of trouble kind of deciphering this one, use a wall. Simplest thing to do is to stand literally against the wall, pelvis against the wall, shoulders against the wall, crossing the arms. I'm going to peel my shoulders forward. And as I peel those shoulders forward, I'm trying to remove one vertebrae at a time all the way down to my end range. So my lumbar and my pelvis are still connected against the wall. That will give you an indication of where your end range for spinal flexion probably is. Now, when we start our car's movement, we're not going to be doing it on the wall. That's a great way to sort of explore what your current capacity is and to start to just train that movement pattern between your brain and your body. So if we go into spinal flexion, neck is going to be neutral. I'm going to again peel the shoulders forward. Pelvis is going to stay stationary, facing forward. I'm going to bring it down as far as I can until I hit my end range. Now, once I'm here, the next piece to spinal cars, or T-spine cars, is going to be rotation. I like to envision a tiny hula hoop that my elbows actually sit on. So I'm going to go into spinal flexion. This is my end range. I'm going to rotate to the right. Pelvis stays forward. I rotate those elbows on a little hula hoop. I feel tension in my back. I'm going to rotate to the other side. I feel tension in the back. Now, interesting enough, that tension is always at the same spot. And that spot happens to be my end range, which happens to be that vertebrae or pair of vertebrae that I'm working in between. So that's actually where I am. So the further I go down in spinal flexion, the further down the spine I'm actually working those vertebrae. If I come up a little bit, I'm now working a little bit higher. So you can actually judge how far down you want to go and which vertebrae you want to use and rotate based on how far down you go into flexion. Now, after rotation, we then go into a laterally flexed position. So if you were just to stand upright, pelvis stays stationary. I'm just going to lean to the right. Pelvis doesn't move. I'm going to see how far I can go, feel a good lengthening of the tissue on the opposite side, and we'll take it to the other side. And again, if you don't move quite as far as I do, that is absolutely okay. Perfect. Now our final position is going to be extension. Extension means my pelvis stays stationary, but I'm going to take my shoulders back further. So now I'm rounding in an extended position of the spine by driving the shoulders backwards. Neck is still neutral, pelvis is stationary, and then I can come up one vertebrae at a time back to my standing position. So now we're going to start to piece these together. First time through, zero irradiation. I just want you to feel comfortable with the movements, and remember, you can always pause the video and come back as needed. Now, again, crossing the arms, we're going to begin by pretending we're standing against a wall, neck is relaxed and neutral, and we're going to peel the shoulders forward. Now, as I peel the shoulders forward, I'm looking for my end range of movement. So for me, it's about right here. I'm going to pretend I'm in that little hula hoop, and I'm going to keep my pelvis facing forward as I rotate to the right. As I come to the right, my elbows stay on that hula hoop. I'm now going to dip my right shoulder and go into lateral flexion. So as I get there, my body is nice and lean, as if it's between two panes of glass or perhaps two walls. From here, I'm gonna lean up, going into thoracic extension. My elbows are still in place. My shoulders are driving back behind the hips a little bit, but my hips are still stationary. From here, I'm gonna dip my left shoulder, coming into lateral flexion on the left side. Again, I'm between two panes of glass or two walls. I'm now gonna rotate to the left. And as I rotate to the left, and I'm gonna turn to the side so you guys can see this, as I rotate to the left, I'm envisioning taking my elbows and placing them back on the hula hoop. So here I am over here again. From here, the hula hoop is underneath my elbows. I slide it back around to center and I go in the opposite direction. This time I'm gonna rotate to the left, pelvis stays forward, hips don't move. I'm gonna dip my left shoulder into lateral flexion. I'm gonna come up again into extension. Again, driving the shoulders backwards, neck is still relaxed in a neutral position. Coming over to the right side, dipping the right shoulder into the right lateral flexion. I'm now gonna rotate, again, taking my elbows onto that hula hoop, and I'm gonna slide them back around to center before piecing them back against the wall behind me, one vertebrae at a time. So that's our movement pattern. I think it works really well. I think the cueing is really clear, and if you need to go back and practice a little bit before irradiation, don't hesitate to do so. All right, we're gonna do 2 full articulations. I'm gonna do one facing to one side and then one facing head on. So this time with irradiation, take a breath, pack air in the lower abdomen, work it down to the toes, up the torso, into the fingertips. So we're gently pushing into the shoulders. Neck is neutral. We're gonna peel the shoulders forward. Again, hips stay stationary. I'm taking it down towards my end range. When I hit it, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna slowly rotate to the right. Pelvis stays forward as I go to my right side, hit my end range and pause. I'm now gonna dip that right shoulder, going into lateral flexion, keeping the pelvis stationary. Pause. We're gonna go up into extension, driving it up, shoulders come back, taking it around. Now I'm gonna dip the left shoulder into lateral flexion on the left side. I'm gonna rotate to the left, taking my elbows onto that little hula hoop, sliding it back around to the front, and now I'm gonna change direction. Rotate to the left, hit your end range, dip the left shoulder, going into lateral flexion. I'm gonna roll upwards, pushing the shoulders back into thoracic extension, around to the right side, dipping the right shoulder. I'm now gonna rotate to the right, placing my elbows on the hula hoop, slide it back around to the front, and slowly up, one vertebrae at a time. Very good. All right, we'll go second time. Take a breath, pack air in the lower abdomen, work it down to the toes, up the torso into your fingertips. Neck is neutral and relaxed. We're gonna peel the shoulders forward into spinal flexion. Again, pelvis stays stationary. When you hit your end range, we're gonna rotate to the right on that little hula hoop. When I hit my end range, I'm now gonna dip my right shoulder, going into a laterally flexed position. I'm gonna bring it up into extension, driving the shoulders slightly back, taking it around, dipping the left shoulder. I'm now gonna rotate to the left, placing my elbows on the hula hoop, slide it back around to the front and change direction. Rotate to the left, dip the left shoulder, coming up into thoracic extension, driving the shoulders back, over to the right side, dipping the right shoulder in lateral flexion, rotate to the right, elbows on a hula hoop, back to center, slowly up, one vertebrae at a time. Very good, everybody. Now again, you may experience some areas or just some challenges in the movement itself, right? The spine is not a set of joints that necessarily moves really often, right? We stand and it just sort of is there. We sit and it's just kind of there. But this is a set of movements, one vertebrae at a time, if you want to think of it that way, where you can start to build up a little bit more consistency in your tissue, start to improve the quality of that tissue, and maybe just start to feel a little bit better overall when it comes to that thoracic spine. Now, if you have any questions about thoracic spine CARs or anything at all, don't hesitate to reach out and contact me. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.